where we have lost over, 100 lives, or about 190 something.
This morning, news is reporting that the death toll has hit 200.
Look at that, for instance. Human beings, not animals. Even when animals die in that large quantity, we sympathize.
Right.
Not to talk of human beings. We're talking about human lives.
Let's talk about responsibility, because we've seen governments say things like we condemn this in strong terms across board. Have we done anything different now?
See. I'm tired of condemnations. I'm tired of the law will take its course. I'm tired of the governor or the president has given a marching order. I'm tired of those statements. Because unless you do things differently, the moment you continue to do the same thing the same way, it's not different from madness, and you cannot get a different result. By now, we should have gotten to the point where we say that it is this land we want to defend, not personal interest. Because in the process of defending personal interest, that personal interest will be jeopardized. I don't know whether you see what I'm saying. Now, if, for instance, it is my interest that is being defended and not the interest of the land, at a point in time, my own interest will be exposed to security risk that they can no longer defend me.
Because the system has been broken down.
Because the system has been thoroughly destroyed. Even if the governor is not careful, one day some people will have the courage to stand on the road. And was the chief of army staff not attacked in Kaduna State the other time? Don't we have situations where people who are even heavily protected, far much more than any other thing, they are still attacked on the road? People can become brazen and say, look, we dare anything that want to happen. We cannot die more than once. Let's go ahead and face. And then even the person that is defending his own interest will be exposed to that risk. So unless we allow the law to take its course in this country, I've always said that there are about 3 or 4 things that can make a nation develop. 1, the rule of law, through the judiciary. 2, the security architecture. They are extremely important. Number 3, the power sector. They are extremely important in any development of any country. So one of the things that is killing us in this country today is the culture of impunity, not even corruption. Corruption is not even our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is the culture of I will do it, nobody will do anything to me, and I will walk away freely. If we had made examples, look at the Buhari period, for instance, when it was military head of state.
Right.
And it brought those 3 or 4 people, tied them to a stake, even though it was retroactive. But at least there was silence in the drug community, in the drug space. A lot of people said, no, something different is happening. There's a new marksman in town.
Right.
And they withdrew. Look at war against indiscipline. In CMS, those who were living in Lagos in those days, when you get to the general post office, you dare not jump the queue. People will stand on, no matter your status, people will stand on the line. I witnessed it personally at the general post office in Marina. People will stand on the line. But no sooner they left, and when the gap-toothed general came, then things began to recline until where we are today, and things have degenerated to the point where we will lose about 200 people in one fell swoop when we are not at war. For God's sake. Impunity is a major challenge in this country. People just walk into government office, take as much money as they want to take, and they walk away, and we'll be having media trial by EFCC and all of those kind of trash.
Would you say, anti-graft agencies like the EFCC and ICPC have overstayed their welcome? Maybe we should rethink how we fight corruption? No,
they cannot overstay their welcome. With profound respect to you, they cannot overstay it. Rather, they need to live up to their responsibility.
But we've been having that conversation for over a decade.
Yes, because because we have not allowed that institution to evolve. I've always had people say we need strong institutions. But I've always said strong institutions don't build themselves without strong men. Now, what I mean by strong men is this. You have a program for 9 o'clock, and 8:30, 8:45, you are at your seat. Your guest is there. If your guest does not come on time, you won't bring him on air. Next time, he will know that once it is about 10 minutes to 9, is waiting for you. He will know your level of discipline. Your station will make it mandatory that if your guest is not there 10 minutes to 9, putting the mic on him, doing everything that, so that exactly 9 o'clock you are on air. Your successor will know that you have set a tradition. The successor of your successor will know that a tradition has been set. So what am I trying to say here? The point I'm trying to make here is that when men do things that are right and build the institution, a culture would have been built and people will build, so that when another person comes, if he wants to do anything contrary to the tradition, the culture of that environment, a lot of people will object to it. If look at what is happening in America now. One state after the other is beginning to say, because Trump caused that commotion in Capitol Hill, they are not going to allow him as a result of an amendment in their constitution.
So he cannot be on the ballot.
So he cannot be on the. So gradually, Trump is beginning to lose states.
One after the other.
One after the other. So if he, how many states we have in America? About 50 states. So if he loses a certain percentage of states, you know that he cannot win the presidency again. That's even right. If a Republican decides to, even if they give him the ticket, he has already lost. I mean, it's like me contesting for election, and they say that they cannot vote for me in Bayelsa, they cannot vote for me in Ogun, they cannot vote for me in Kogi, they cannot vote for me in Oyo, they cannot vote for me in Kaduna, they cannot vote for me in Sokoto, they cannot vote for me in Rivers. I have lost
at Kano and Lagos to that.
So I mean, it's technical. It's clear that I cannot go for the election.
That's right.
These are the kind of things that I thought by now our democracy should be moving towards. We copied the American system, but we have not done what they do in America. Okay, assuming, I mean, it's clear that Nigeria is not America. We have our own local system. Were we not resolving issues before the white man came?
Of course.
We had our own traditional legal system that was very effective. When a king does something wrong, he is banished from the land, and he doesn't come back again.
I thought we should talk about, I mean, a bit more about this corruption issue. Because it appears, like you called it, media trial and so on and so forth. So the efforts are not biting hard.
They are not.
Enough. And now it brings us to revelations we are seeing flowing out from the Jim Obaze investigation right now. What has been your assessment of that process?
Well, if the content of that report represents the things that took place in CBN, it is not only unfortunate, it's extremely sad, and I endorse, and I think the government should take the bold step of dealing with that, at least for once. For once, let us have a situation where we can have a clear trial and somebody is held accountable for his action in office. See, public office, even with your own private funds, you are responsible to yourself.
Right.
I mean, if you go for, if you see a doctor, I mean, for some time now, I've been having I mean, when I go for medical issues, they will ask me, do you live alone? Is somebody staying with you? What they are trying to determine is, to whom am I accountable? That's my own personal life. They want to know whether I'll be responsible enough to take my drugs, or I will have it at the back of my mind that if I don't take my drugs and something happens to me, it will injure the interest of those people around me. So, am I accountable? Our public office holders, we have donated to them. We are a donor of a social contract agreement. They are the donee of that power. They owe us the responsibility to account to us what they did with the power. And if they have done anything wrong with the power, they should account for it and be punished according to law. That is why the symbol of justice is a blinded image. So that when the sword is swung, the scale is tilted, and the sword is swung, whether it's your father, whether it's your mother, whether it's your brother, whether it's you yourself, you are caught in the sword will go at once. It doesn't care who it hits. But here we care about who the person. So whether you are central bank governor, but we don't have the culture of trying presidents here. Look at Trump. They brought Trump to trial.
We're just going to we're going to quickly hit a break now. Everyone, we're back shortly to continue our conversation on the show this morning with Bode Fadigbe. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're jumping right to our next discussion this morning, which focuses on the power sector and the issues associated with it, especially the distribution segment of it, and then, very importantly, the question of whether or not government should continue subsidizing, as we now know it, that segment of the market. Again, that's a strong point for Bode Fadigbe. So, Bode, you and I talked about power sector several months ago, but there's a twist to the developments now. Where are we with distribution in particular? Because that's very critical for end users.
I think generally, not just distribution alone, but even the entire value chain right. of the power sector. You will see that no sooner than the current minister was sworn in, that Chief Adegoke, Adebayo Adelabu. I was almost going to say Adegoke because again he's the grandson of the right. the Stormy Petrel of Ibadan politics, Penkelemes. So he has started, taking some steps. We see him talking about the fact that I know that at the 10th year anniversary of the power sector that was held in October, November this year, he said if he had a choice, he wouldn't have supported privatization, and that commercialization would have been his choice. And beyond that point, he has also been saying that at certain points in time in this country, we should be able to speak about a more functional power sector. And then I also know of a fact that he also said the tariff cannot be adjusted until we can speak of service. so many things are going on. I also know of a fact that even the office of the Honorable Minister did arrange for a retreat of the entire power sector structure to look at issues in the power sector and see how the power sector can be moved forward. One thing we can say is that the power sector is not where we want it to be. There's no doubt about that. And one of the fundamental reasons why the sector is where it is also because of the issue of liquidity. I mean, I know clearly that there had been conversation around the issue of MBED, whether MBED should be or MBED should not be, all of those conversations. But a principal issue among several other issues that are being reviewed in the power sector, availability of electricity at the generation level, does transmission have the capacity to take what is being provided, is distribution available to be able to distribute, and all of those things. At the top of all of this conversation, apart from the issue of policy, is the issue of liquidity. And liquidity can only be achieved when the recovery level is commensurate with the electron. What am I trying to say? The velocity of electron, in other words, the amount of energy you generate and you move to transmission and distribution, must be equal to the amount of naira that comes back from the end users to the market. That is the simplest arithmetic that can cause the sector to survive. Any differential will stagnate, if not bring about retrogression. Now, let's break down all of this big grammar. When, as a businessman, you put money into business, the least you want is to get back your investment, even if you are not going to get a markup. The least you want is to say, I have spent 10 naira, I should get back 10 naira. But if you are now getting 6 naira, 4 naira short of the 10 naira that you invested, who is going to pay the 4 naira? This is where the issue of subsidy comes in. So, what is subsidy? Subsidy is a difference between the true costs and the allowable costs. The concept of allowable cost is coming in because this is a regulated sector that has the content of a social service and a commodity. So, where does government want to lean to? There is that dilemma of where government wants to lean to. Will government see electricity as a social service, or government will see electricity as a commodity? Before now, the content of government's interpretation of electricity weighed more in the direction of a social service, which is understandable, because even the way electricity came into the country followed that trajectory. And no sooner we came to that point than we also found oil, and Nigeria was spending money. Our population was small. Nigeria was able to carry almost everybody along. But things have changed dramatically. Population has exploded. We are over 200. I mean, we are 200 million. Technology has improved dramatically. More things have been brought in. I mean, in the 70s, how many people had telephone in this country? Right. Very few. Electric cars are going to come in very soon. And they are also going to demand power for them to be able to work in this country. So the demand has increased. Unfortunately, where demand has increased exponentially, government revenue has dwindled exponentially. Or government revenue has not grown at that same pace. Government has now said, about 10 years ago, this same argument, government said, look, I don't have the money to take care of everybody again. Those who can fend for themselves, let's give them out. And electricity is one of those sectors. Let me tell you the truth, Uyi. If not that crude oil is sold in Forex, one of the biggest generator of revenue is electricity. Why? It is used every day, not just every day, every minute, and it is desired by everybody. Whether you are living under somebody's roof or you are living alone, you want to use electricity. Number 3, the more electricity you have, the more you want to consume it. If For instance, there is a breakdown of power supply in advanced countries today. So many things will go wrong. Their malls will not be able to work. Their financial system will crash. Their medical system will go into trouble. Their social security system will go into trouble. Their security system will go into trouble. Practically everything will come to a halt.
Including traffic lights.
God bless you. So you might even have situations where there will be multiple accidents on the road at the same time.
At intersections.
At intersections. Because people will get confused immediately and say, what's happening? What's happening? Is the world coming to an end? And you say, bah. That's the beauty of electricity. God bless whoever discovered electricity. God bless him. And God bless those. So the point we are trying to make here is that 4 naira differential, which is the subsidy, is creating a lot of problem in the power sector today. One of the major problems it is creating is that government is not only unable to pay that promise of the 4 naira, even when it is paying it, it is not paying it on time because of the paucity of government funds. Government has frozen the recoverable level of revenue, but it has liberalized forex. It has the jump in inflation has also affected. Nigeria has one of the worst inflation figure in the world today.
That's right.
Above 20%. When America's inflation is below 8%, let's even say 5%. That's so, and all of these things, they have their consequence on the power sector. So if this power sector, another fundamental problem that this subsidy is creating is that it is discouraging. It's a disinvestment for investors. I mean, if you have the fund, for instance, say Uyi wants to come into the power sector, and you cannot even charge your investment, you won't go there. Capital gravitates towards where there is value. If there is no value for your fund, your money will not gravitate in that direction. So if there is value in the power sector, more funds will come in. So we need to rethink this issue of subsidy. Can government sustain it? For instance, in 2024, government subsidy for the power sector will hit as much as 1.6 trillion.
Just next year.
Just next year. I mean, in fact, next year we are being generous with words. Just next week. From next week. I mean, when is next year? By Sunday we are. I mean, by Monday we are in next year. And by the time we look at what government is going to spend, where is government going to get the 1.6 trillion from?
But does government realize the implication of this?
I think it does, but it appears that government is using a wrong business model to drive its decision. What is the business model that government is using? It's using a business model, what I call the Santa syndrome, or the compassion syndrome. Compassion is not a principle for business management. It's not. Like, just as hope is not a principle for business management, compassion or Santa syndrome is not a principle. And what do I call the Santa syndrome? This is, thank God this is Christmas period. I mean, you go to a place, somebody gives you gift. You didn't pay for, but somebody is paying for it. Don't forget that. Somebody brought out his money to pay for it. Can that person who brought out his money to pay for it continue to do it? In this case, the federal government. Can the federal government continue to subsidize? Imagine that we take that 1.6 trillion and we say, okay, Nigerian universities, we equip Nigerian universities so much so that we now change the narrative of Nigeria, where most people go to UK, America, and other advanced countries for their education, and we now make our children to study here and even bring foreigners. Now, we would have earned foreign exchange. We would have earned foreign exchange. From improving our universities.
Right.
Imagine that we allow the proper price to be charged for electricity, and then we can talk of 24/7. Now, it means our economy will not go to sleep at night. Because there will be those who will work in the daytime. There will be those who will work in the night time.
The SMEs will be better for it.
SMEs will be better for it. Clubs and all of those things. Number 3, manufacturing will alternative sources of energy for manufacturing will drop, and they can then put more money on raw materials. They can put more money on research and discover new ways of doing what they have been doing before. Number 5 or number 4, companies that thought of leaving will stay, because there is, why do people rush to China? Is it not because of economy of scale? That it is cheaper to produce there with all of the import duties, insurance, and every other charges. I can still go to China, do what I want to do, and bring them here than to do it locally. You get what I'm saying? So, allowing electricity to be priced at the right amount is to our own advantage. We cannot continue to use compassion and the Santa syndrome to drive business decisions. We either bite the bullet now, or we wait for the time when the system will collapse on our head. I mean, I know that there is this argument in the public space. What about the poor people?
Can they afford it?
Can the affordability issue? Again, what is the conversation around this issue of affordability? I was speaking with a commissioner for energy in one of the western states sometime in November or thereabout. And he said, look, Mr. Fadipe, we know clearly that all fingers are not equal. People have different level of financial comfort and capability.
Right.
Therefore, we recognize that fact. However, we have tested something in our state. We have taken this electricity to rural areas, and we have found out that people want electricity, and they pay what we are charging. What we need is a reorientation. And how did he put it? He said, let people look at the use of electricity from budgetary perspective. I budget 50 naira for electricity and use it for a certain period of time. Once I exhaust that credit, I stay off the grid. One of the fundamental things that will do for us is that it will forcibly pull us in the direction of energy management. Because what you don't need, you won't just be wasting away. I mean, the tele density in this country is extremely high.
Right.
The moment you exhaust the credit on your phone, what happens? It becomes just a receiver. Thank God they have not started charging money for receiving calls. At least, I mean. So, but the moment you have money, you buy the amount of credit that you want, load it, use it. The moment you exhaust it again, unless there is a Santa that is giving you some credit. If you operate the budget system, once you have finished the budget for that week, if you follow that disciplinary process, you are not buying anyone again.
Right.
The same thing in the house. Children, madam, or oga, if madam is the one managing the finance, I have allocated 10,000 naira for electricity this week.
So you've got to limit your use
to that 10,000 naira. Once it finishes, everybody, darkness.
You wait till the next week.
You wait till the next week. You will see that over a period of time, there will be adjustments. I listened to a gentleman a long time ago, and he said when they were young, they were taught that when you get to the toilet, when you get to the bathroom, you don't use the entire water in the closet to flush. After urinating, you just take some quantity of water and pour into it so that you can, and I was laughing where I was. Can people be that thrifty with their use of...
That conservative?
But the truth of the matter is that, yes, it may have its own bad side, because you may not be able to push the entire urine away. You may have only diluted. But at least the young man has been taught thriftiness. Even to the point of water in the bath.
So he can apply it to other critical areas.
Exactly. The toothpaste that you are using, you know that you press from the base. You don't just pick from the head. With your money, it's okay. Is this you don't buy, you don't spend on impulse. You just see things on the traffic and you say, hey, come. Meanwhile, you may even be buying.
So there's a people element in this conversation.
Oh, there is a people element. So we must take that into consideration, but we must also begin to change the mentality. Electricity, yes, it has social It's that social amenity component, but more these days of commodity components. And we must drive it in that direction. Otherwise, we stand the risk of allowing this system to collapse on everybody. Which one is better? That the electricity is expensive and available, or that it is cheap and it collapses? Which one is better?
I think Nigerians have to make that decision. But while they are at it, if government were to pull out, I mean, with regards to this subsidy initiative in the power sector, for example, will that solve all the problems that we see in that sector?
It will not, but it will deal substantially with a major part of it. Let's not think that the beginning and the end of Nigeria's power sector problem is government, because that would be policy, that would be politics. I've always argued that there are 4 quadrants that deal with electricity supply: the politics or policy, the economics, the technology, and the sociology of power supply. The sociology has to do with the attitude of the people.
Right.
I mean, look at what happened in Damaturu recently, where some vandals, or not even vandals, some bandits pulled down a transmission structure. That is sociological. That is the attitude of the people. How can you go and pull down a structure that benefits everybody? Who is going to replace it? It's still the same people. Niger people did not come. Americans did not come to do it. They are not the ones suffering. We, Nigerians, are the ones suffering.
I'm just thinking now that we're talking about the people end of this narrative. We've seen where a transformer parks up in a neighborhood across this country. And then the people there find a way to muster, I mean, just put
Resources,
money together.
yes.
And ultimately they're able to come up with whatever is required to get a new transformer. And then their distributor, in the case of, let's say, some part of the South-South, you hear the the BEDC, for instance, will say you have to pay for us to come and install. And then they give you conditions beyond just paying for them to install. And then ultimately they tell you that transformers belong to the power the distributor. Is that in the law? Is that in the act setting up the power sector? Now, or is it just some practices by the key players themselves?
I can tell you that is one narrative that is very unfortunate in the power sector. I won't sit down here and tell you and pretend as if I don't know about what you are saying, because I've also contributed. I've also been a victim of that kind of circumstance, where the local distributor will say that, okay, and then you start looking for politicians to donate transformer to you, and then you take it to them, and then they say, okay, you have to do a letter to us to say you are donating to them, and it becomes part of their assets. They capitalize it and they see it as part of their own property. But that in itself is a gross violation of the rules set out by NEC. The regulator has been kind enough to say, look, if a community is going to improve your asset level, there has to be an agreement between you and that community on how you will defray the cost of that asset. But most of the time, the community themselves or the people are in a hurry to get this thing, and they are not prepared to wait until that agreement is clearly spelled out. So you cannot blame the regulator for it. But I tell you, it's an unfortunate conversation within the power sector space, where and without entering a defense for the discos themselves. Imagine a distribution company that is highly liquidified, that has the capital that it wants, and then it has in stock maybe 100 pieces of transformer, maybe, okay, 20 pieces of 500 kVA transformer, 20 pieces of 300 kVA transformer, 20 pieces of 200, 20 pieces of 100, maybe another 20 pieces of 50 kVA transformer, pole mounted, so that the moment there is a failure of transformer somewhere, it takes it out and replaces it immediately, and then goes back maybe to repair that failed transformer. Imagine that we have a disco that is, one disco that is doing something close to that is Yola Disco. Do you know what Yola Disco is doing? Yola Disco discovered that they cannot find good poles in the country. So what did they decide to do? They decided to set up a pole manufacturing company that will now produce the pole that can fit into their own geography. So that when there's heavy storm, because during the rainy season, thank God we are in the dry season now, there's less wind. When it comes to the rainy season and rain comes with heavy wind, you find most of these poles falling down and things like that. But Yola said, no, we won't continue to do that. We will now produce our own pole, study the wind speed and every other geographical element, and consider it when we are producing our pole and bring out our pole. Before you know what is happening, in the next 5 years, Yola will become the mecca for the production of poles in the electricity industry. These are the kind of things that our power sector should begin to look at. But again, it is predicated on the fund that is available. And this is where this issue of subsidy comes in. Let me emphasize and re-emphasize that unless government is ready to bite the bullet, we may be taking a big risk. We may get back to a power sector that was even much more inefficient than whatever we called the pre-privatization power sector.
Well, let's hope government finds the teeth to bite the bullet, I mean, to use the words. But then there are now concerns as to saying that the mistakes, the errors that came with the processes leading up to privatization, and now the consequences we're suffering. If there's anything to go by, it means these problems are foundational. And foundational problems, you and I know, are difficult to correct. Are we just going to deal with the superficial manifestations, or want to find the courage and sincerity of purpose to go to the bottom of it?
I think by now, after 10 years, we should not be dealing with the issue of foundation again, because we can now move the structure up a little bit, deal with those foundational issues, and return the structure. I mean, I understand the analogy you are dealing with when you use the issue of foundation. I mean, a structure that is there. For a physical structure, for instance, you probably would need to pull down the entire house and then restart from the beginning again. We may not be able to do that with the power sector. Rather, we can tinker with what we have currently. We can tinker with it and reshape it here and there until we get to the point where we can say that we have, because it's a matter of policy. I mean, take for instance, when the power sector was to be privatized, people talked about the issue of the business model. And what was the business model? Dollar was used to buy, and then payment pattern. What pattern they did follow? At the time that dollar was, at the time it was privatized, I think dollar was less than 200 naira to $1. But it's about 6 times now. About 1,200 or thereabouts that dollar is now. Yet some of them are still paying back the loan with which they acquired. So whether they are paying in dollar or paying in naira, the fact remains that the loan value has increased alongside every other thing, alongside every other charges associated with that acquisition facility. So that at the end of the day, they are almost perpetually in a debt situation. If you are going to privatize another if for instance government builds a new power station and it says, I want to sell, for instance, should government follow that model again? Of course, government will not follow that model. If they want to sell, should we allow them to go and borrow money from the banks? So many things will start changing gradually. Let us not forget the fact that we were doing privatization for the first time in the history of this country. And we privatized the beginning and the end, leaving the middle. Again, that's a major challenge that people are looking at. Say, okay, look, if you want to have a functional power,
go the full hog.
Go the full hog. Don't leave, because staff mentality is also an issue. Oh, we are still in the public service. This is the way we behave in the public service and things like that. Maybe there is a distribution arm that is having problems somewhere, and the problem is as a result of maybe challenges in the transmission sector. And you say, okay, look, these are the problems, and you say, we need to follow this track, we need to follow this track, we need to follow this track.
Bureaucracy
and all of those things. Yet, for the private sector, it's a matter of what is the value? Is this something that should go to the board or executive management? How can we deal with it within 1 week? Because he knows that money is being tied down, and the businessman does not want his money to be tied down.
Yeah.
So these are issues that we need to consider. So for me, yes, there may have been challenges at the beginning, but 10 years after, we should be able to start correcting those challenges. And this is where institutional memory is very, very important. Anyone who was there at the beginning of privatization is likely to be there by now. Or if they are not there, bring them back. Constitute them into a think tank and say, what did we get wrong? What did we get wrong? What do we need to do? What do we need to do? What are the parameters we set at the beginning? Who has met it? Who has not met it? For the ones who have met it, what do we need to do to improve? For the ones who have not met it, do we send them out since they have not met it? Or we give them some period of moratorium? What do we need to do? These are issues that we need to consider very seriously in going forward. So I don't think we should pull down the entire structure, which probably will mean that we bring down privatization. No. What are the things we need to do to strengthen the system? I think that's the direction we should be looking at.
At the point, the distribution companies were complaining about paucity of funds. They're talking about how that's even the loans they got from banks, they had not been able to defray. They needed more money to stabilize and strengthen their operations. Would you say from your assessment that those problems have now been resolved?
They have not been resolved. I mean, clearly, they have not been resolved. If they have, for instance, the issue of metering will not continue to linger.
Right.
I mean, I know that in the outgoing year or so, Discos were only able to meter 500,000 customers all over the country.
And that falls short of expectation, not
Of course, I mean, I strongly hold that view that it falls short of expectation, given the customer population. Not just that alone. Okay, let's even take customer population, for instance. The data from the regulatory agency is that customer population is about 12 million plus. Out of that 12 million plus, 7.1 million customers are on estimated billing. If meters were available in the quantity they ought to be available, 7.1 should not be on estimated billing. So it means that if there were more meters or certain policy instruments were available or are in place, more than 500,000 customers would have been metered within a specified period. So it's either that the providers of meter asset providers are not comfortable with the cost because of the inflationary trend, and maybe they have some offshore components that they also need to take care of, which brings in forex, and we know the cost of forex. And if they have to put the right price on meter, maybe a single phase meter will be going for as much as 150,000. And of course, you know what salary is, or what the average person earns in this country. So many factors are tied to it. But one of the ways to start solving this problem is to take care of the cost of energy. Can we continue? Okay, take for instance, the calculation of the regulator for...
That's the NERC?
Yes. For true cost is above 100 naira.
True cost?
True cost. The allowable cost is about 50% less that amount. The allowable cost is about 50% less that amount. Who is going to be responsible for that?
That's a gap already.
Yes, that's a gap, and a very serious gap. I mean, when Mr. President, immediately after his inauguration, the first thing he said was, subsidy is gone. And we saw petrol moving from how much? About 100 and something
that same day?
That same day.
Right.
Moving from about 100 and something naira to about 600.
About 190, 195, all the way up to 600.
To 600. Now, let's even say that, assuming that it was 200 naira, and it went to 600, 400 naira gap was huge. Was huge by all standard. Now look at that of electricity. Slightly above 100, I think the figure I have is about 111 naira for right pricing of electricity. But what is being charged is below that. I think it's about 67 naira or so. And there's a difference of about 58 naira or something like that. Now, who is going to be paying for that? Perhaps even much more disturbing is the fact that it is not even the poor man that is benefiting the subsidy.
Who is?
The rich man. Because they are the ones that have the fund to buy large quantity. Whether we like it or not, you will find out that, I don't know where you live, but perhaps you would have noticed that electricity has been a bit stable in Abuja in recent times. I have experienced it, even though I live a little bit outside the city center. I have experienced it. And I'm sure that's the testimony of quite a large number of people. Now, for those of us who are living within the capital city of Abuja, we cannot say that we are not enjoying the subsidy. Is it the same thing that is being enjoyed in Nyanya, in Masaka, in Pape? What is the amount of energy that is available to them? So you find out that in big cities like Warri, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, Sokoto, Lagos, people enjoy this thing, but they are not paying the price that is commensurate. So even the poor people that we say we are fighting for, they are not even enjoying it.
Interesting. Just on a final note, we heard the other time that there was going to be an upward review of electricity tariff, but that got suspended again. Was that suspension the right move, or was it just testing the waters to see how Nigerians would react?
You see, that's why I said compassion is not a business principle. Mr. President said, okay, look, we have just removed subsidy on petroleum.
Let's not make a bad situation worse.
I mean, Nigerians are still complaining. They are still trying to grapple with the pains of increase in petrol. Now you want to bring electricity into it. Hold on a little bit and let me see exactly where we are going to. As the father of the nation, we thank him for doing that. You cannot fault compassion at any time. But there are also moments when you can fault compassion. For instance, you have a little boy given to you by God. The boy has grown to about 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. And you take him to the school to go and register him. And as you drive out of the school, the boy is crying. And you look back and you go and pick the boy back home. You say, don't worry, daddy loves you. Are you doing that boy a favor? Or you are preparing evil for the boy's future? See, because the boy does not want to leave the father. A time comes when the doctor puts a patient on the operating table and cuts the patient. The doctor is seeing blood, but he knows he goes ahead. He knows that if he does not cut and remove the cancerous cell, he will lose the entire. I mean, women who go through what they call radical operation when they have breast cancer, it's not palatable to the doctor and to the patient. But they know that if they leave those two, the breasts there, if they don't remove them, they will lose the entire patient. So which one is better? Or those who have aggravated diabetes and they have to amputate. Even scripture says, I mean, with due respect to those who are listening, say it's better to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to go to hell with 2 eyes open. What do we do in the circumstance? Mr. President said, don't increase now. Yes, it's good, but it's not the best decision. Because ultimately, we will come back to it. And the earlier we start, because it's a recurrent thing, the earlier we start, the better for us. If, since the Babangida years or the Gowon years, we have been made to see electricity as a commodity and not a social service, strictly speaking, by now our mind would have been made up that yes. I mean, look at the Jonathan period, for instance. And this is where the issue of politics comes in. Jonathan was going to go for election. Dr. Ebele Goodluck Jonathan was going to go for election. And there was a proposition for the review of tariff. And he said, hold on. Because he knew. It
will adversely impact his chances at the polls.
But did it solve the problem? It didn't solve the problem. It didn't solve the problem. But see where we are. So let's bite the bullet now.
I've been trying not to ask you this, but I guess we'll wrap up on these notes. The governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, has been trying to rally the support of his colleagues from around the South recently, even up to Ondo State, for example. Of course, the BDC services Ondo State, to see how they can come together, form a solid front, if you like, and who knows, do something more drastic and a bit unconventional, for want of better words, all aimed at two things: to make power available to the people in these states and then make it more affordable. Would you say that move is timely?
The new Electricity Act 2023 gives the states the power to now become players in the power sector. I mean, and that's commendable, because we must give it to Mr. President. I think he signed that bill into law about 11 days into his
exit.
Into his coming into office. Buhari amended the constitution, which is the ground norm, which is the principal law.
Right.
The Electricity Act is a subsidiary legislation which takes its power from the Constitution. Without the amendment of the Constitution, the Electricity Act would not have been able to donate power to the state government. So what Buhari signed was the Constitution. What Tinubu signed was the Electricity Act. Now, it gives the state government the power to generate, to transmit, and to distribute. So, by reason of that power, they can do anything that they want. They can work with BEDC.
Within that framework.
Within that framework. But if they are going to have trans-border relationships, the NEC, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, will still be involved. Even at that, before they can get in fully, NEC will still be involved, because it's like a father who has about 36 children, and he wants to share the property. Everybody has to delineate his own area. Everybody has to delineate. So that's exactly what is going to happen. So if Obaseki is rallying his colleagues in Ondo, in Ekiti, and Delta, including his own state, Edo, I think that's a wonderful move, which I consider to be very wise. If they can bring about stability of electricity, affordability of electricity, they already have the power to do it. They should not shy away from it. My concern is, how do they raise the capital? Of course, as an investment banker, he would know how to
find his way around it.
Yes, advise his colleagues.
Excellent. Let's see how soon that happens, and the blessing, as it were, that it brings to the people across those states. I'd like to say a big thank you to Bode Fadigbe for coming on the show. For the records, Bode is a lawyer and power sector specialist. As the year winds to an end, one of the big stories we've seen in 2023 is the coup that took place in the Niger Republic on the 26th of July this year. But fast forward 5 months down the line, there's no end in sight in terms of return to civil rule or a constitutional government. The role of ECOWAS has been emphasized and in some cases re-emphasized. However, going into 2024, what will the regional bloc do differently? Danjuma Abdullahi of, our partner correspondent, sent in this report just to give a succinct look into the place of ECOWAS in this narrative. I'm Uyag Mofwebe. Thank you for watching our program today.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, was established in 1975 with the objective of promoting economic integration in all fields of economic activity. 48 years after the establishment of the ECOWAS, there is controversy over whether the regional economic body has achieved the set objectives. Some researchers have pointed at the development of an expanded market which ensures the free flow of goods and services as one of the achievements. Other achievements of the ECOWAS include free movement of people within the sub-region without the use of visa, sports promotion through the WAFU Games, and the right to reside within the member states.
Economic Community of West Africa.
ECOWAS also encourages democracy and strongly condemns military intervention under any guise.
The delivery of good governance is not just a fundamental commitment, it's also an avenue to address the concerns of our citizens.
For several decades, Western liberal democracy is seen as a catalyst for fostering development in West Africa and indeed other regions of the world. Experts agree that democratic principles have the power to drive progress and prosperity. However, Lately, scholars are beginning to reanalyze the concept.
The essence of every government is to provide good governance. And time again, it has been found that democracy could not provide this good governance. Not only in Niger, not only in Nigeria, but globally. The platform upon which democracy operates on such a manner that the interest of the few is superimposed over and above the interest of the majority.
The frequency of the summits.
5 West African countries are currently under military rule following coups. Niger Republic is the latest country and is facing severe sanctions from the West African regional body ECOWAS. ECOWAS has resolved to send a delegation of 3 member countries to Niger Republic to negotiate the reduction in the number of transition to democracy period. ECOWAS also wants the delegation to discuss the release of ousted Nigerian leader Bazoum. The regional body has indicated that the outcome of the mission will either result in a reduction of the sanctions or increasing them.
Under Bazoum, they were being paid €2 per ton of uranium. Today it's about €200 per ton of uranium. The difference of about 198. And according to some projections, if this thing continues only on uranium, not on other things, only on uranium, in the next 5-7 years, Niger is going to be one of the best 10 countries in terms of economic development and growth.
Already, the military leaders of 3 West African countries have recently signed a mutual defense pact which calls for the 3 neighboring countries to come to the defense of each other in case of any aggression. Experts have posited that beyond meetings and fostering camaraderie of African brotherhood, the ECOWAS is far from achieving its set objectives.
For 1975 till date, it's still on policy. So these are some of the questions we should ask ourselves as West Africans. Do we need eternity to introduce this single currency? Do we need eternity to do away with the colonial borders? Do we need eternity to have that not only artificial integration, but the real integration within the West African sub-region? So other sub-regions across the world are far ahead of us, and we have started earlier than them.
Experts agree that the dream of creating a large trading bloc that would facilitate self-sufficiency and cooperation among member states can come if members come together and genuinely take security seriously.
One for all and all for one. That is the agenda that we should put for security. And we can do it. We should be able to protect ourselves from external imperialism. People putting mouth into our own affairs. We should resist it and reject it at the same time.
Experts say member countries must also strive to achieve political stability, which is a function of good governance, development of transport infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and massively invest in the information and communication technology. Danjuma Abdullahi.
Welcome to Global Morning.